So the new revolutionary government of Syria just had a meeting with the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And what was the interest of the meeting? The interest of the meeting was Turkey building military bases in Syria. So you are going to be seeing Turkey building military bases in Syria. Make way, everyone. Make way for the rebirth of the Ottoman Empire. We are witnessing this right before our eyes. We are seeing history. And Turkey is going to be building military bases, but I thought that the Syrian revolution was about the freedom of the Syrian people, the liberation of the Syrian people. But what do we see happening right before our eyes? What we see happening is the military occupation of Syria by Turkey. The Syrian revolution had absolutely nothing to do with the freedom of the Syrian people and everything to do with reviving the Turkish Empire and enabling Turkey to take over Syria and to fill up the power vacuum left by Bashar al-Assad, left really by the toppling of Bashar al-Assad thanks to the United States, Turkey, and Israel. And just hours ago, Reuters published an article about this meeting. Although the article was written hours before the meeting happened, nonetheless, the article talks about the purpose of the meeting. And I want to read to you guys some excerpts from this article because they're quite telling. So here, I'll read to you guys the beginning of the article. It says here that Syria's transitional president Ahmed al-Shara and Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan are expected to discuss a joint defense pact in Ankara on Tuesday, including establishing Turkish air bases in central Syria and training for Syria's new army, four sources familiar with the matter said. And look at what it says here. It says, Ankara is positioning itself to play a major role in the new Syria, filling a vacuum left by Assad's main regional backer, Iran, in an expansion of Turkish sway that could spark rivalry with Gulf Arab states and put Israel on edge. Who's on edge here? Who's on edge? Israel and the Gulf Arabs, the biggest enemies of Turkey, and also, I will say, the biggest enemies of the Iranians. Both the Iranians and the Turks hate the Israelis and the Gulf Arabs. They hate the Saudis. They hate the UAE. Turkey hates the Gulf Arabs, and Turkey wants to take over Israel. Now, keep in mind, Turkey wants to revive its Ottoman Empire. It wants to bring back its golden days. Well, the Arab Peninsula and Israel both used to be under Ottoman control. So if the Turks want to revive their empire, that means Israel and the Gulf Arabs are both in the crosshairs of Turkey. Turkey wants to conquer both of them, the Gulf Arabs and the Israelis. And so the Israelis are on edge, but Israel, oh dear Israel, Israel my glory, right? As the Zionists love to say. They love to say that. Oh, Israel my glory. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if I forget thee, let my right hand be cut off, right? Let's go full Zionism mode here. Israel, you guys wanted to just throw away Bashar al-Assad, and you did, right? You managed to help in the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad was some Alawite eye doctor. Yes, he had some brutality in him. Yes, his government, his regime did do brutal and terrible things, but you really can't be an Arab dictator without being somewhat, at least somewhat brutal. But you guys hated the eye doctor, you Israelis did, and you said, oh, well, we have to get rid of this Shiite power chain, and so let's topple Bashar al-Assad because he is allowing Syria to be used by Iran as a bridge by which to transfer weapons into Lebanon to arm Hezbollah. So we have to get rid of them. And so you guys worked to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. You armed Jabhat al-Nusra, which is now ruling Syria, by the way, as a proxy of Turkey, of course. And you guys partially are responsible for the overthrowing of Bashar al-Assad. But now you guys are on edge. Now you guys are either hysterical, or you guys are not very intelligent, or you are hysterically demonic. Perhaps the latter of this list is true, because I've heard for many years that Israelis are supposed to be very, very smart people. So you guys are obviously very intelligent. I mean, you guys have your own Silicon Valley. You guys have a very sophisticated defense industry. I mean, you guys are really at the top of the line of creating state-of-the-art technology and pharmaceuticals as well. So you guys are obviously very intelligent. And I remember over a decade ago reading about how the Israeli official Amos Gilad said that Bashar al-Assad is not really our concern. So you guys knew that Bashar al-Assad wasn't really a threat. So perhaps Israel, the soul of Israel, is just possessed by some sort of demon that has led you into hysteria and great delusion, that you guys make decisions like this, and now you have to deal with a revived Ottoman power right next door. And it's the second most armed country in NATO. And they hate you guys, and your territory of Israel used to be under the Ottoman Empire, and they want to bring the band back together. They want to bring the Ottoman Empire back, which means Israel and the Arab Peninsula are both in the crosshairs of the Neo-Ottomans. And so now the Israelis and the Saudis definitely have to deepen security ties, because you guys don't have to worry just about Iran now. Now you guys also have to worry about Turkey. So the Arabs, the Gulf Arabs, the Saudis, the Arabs of the UAE, now they definitely have to deepen security ties with the Israelis. And the Turks hate the Gulf Arabs, and they also hate the Israelis. And so if they see the Gulf Arabs working with the Israelis, the Turks, alongside the Iranians, are going to say, what? Look at the Yahud in bed with the Sunnis. Look at how the Jews are in cahoots with the Sunni Arab enemies of ours. So you guys are in a very, very difficult predicament, and that's really an understatement. Now, the Russians, they have a naval base on the coast of the Tartus, and they also have a military base in Latakia. And the Russians want to make sure that their military presence remains within Syria. Why? Because Syria is very important, because in Syria, the Russians have direct access into the Mediterranean. So the Russians don't want to lose their military presence in Syria. And the Turks want to control Syria. So what is this going to lead to? It's going to lead to a clash between the Russians and the Turks. And I believe this is also going to lead to a clash between the Israelis and the Turks. Now, the Israelis might create some sort of a pact with the Turks, but regardless of what the Israelis might do to try to ameliorate the situation, the Israelis are really going to have to face a powerful Turkish powerhouse in the Near East. And the Russians, they want to have access into the Mediterranean through the Tartus, but the Turks, like I said, they want to control Syria. So inevitably, there's going to be a clash, and you are going to see really a revival of the Russo-Turkish conflict that was so prominent in the past. And you see NATO supporting Turkey. They want Turkey in Syria. Why? Because they want the Russians out. What truly is the purpose of NATO? If you read the initial mission statement of NATO, the purpose of NATO is to keep the Germans weak and to keep the Russians out, and they definitely want to keep the Russians out of Syria. They want to keep the Russians out of the Middle East. Just like the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Habsburgs in the past wanted to keep the Russians out of the Balkans, and so they supported the Ottomans in the Balkans. They supported the Muslims in the Balkans because they wanted to keep the Serbs weak, because the Serbs have always been a very strong ally of the Russians. Now, if you can go back to the 19th century and you can read about the Crimean War. What was the Crimean War about? It was about preventing the Russians from taking over Anatolia, or what we today call Turkey. And the Russians wanted to take over Constantinople because the Russians are Eastern Orthodox Christians. Constantinople is the holiest city of Eastern Orthodoxy. So the Russians wanted to take all of Turkey, but they especially wanted Constantinople for religious reasons. And the Ottomans were persecuting Christians, and the Russians told the Ottomans, listen, you guys are persecuting Eastern Orthodox Christians, and we will not allow this. And so the Russians declared war on the Ottomans, and the Russians were close to defeating the Ottomans, and they could have taken Constantinople. And as Eastern Orthodox Christians, they could have retaken Constantinople, because Constantinople, or what we today call Istanbul, was originally an Eastern Orthodox city. And what happened? The British intervened. The British intervened, and they fought against the Russians, and the Russians lost. The British prevented the Russians from taking Turkey. And what eventually happened? Fast forward into the 20th century, and you have World War I, and the British had to face the Ottomans in the Dardanelles. So they could have in the past just allowed the Russians to take Turkey, and the Russians would have been an ally of the British, as they were an ally of the British within the Entente of World War I. But no, they prevented the Russians from taking Anatolia. They helped the Ottomans, only to later have to face the Ottomans in World War I. And the British sent Australian and New Zealander or Kiwi soldiers into the Dardanelles. And the British and their allies, alongside the French, were butchered by the tens of thousands by the Ottomans in the Gallipoli campaign in the Dardanelles. And why are the Russians today so interested in Turkey? For the same reason why they were interested in Turkey in the past, because of the Dardanelles, because of that direct access from the Black Sea through the Bosphorus into the Sea of Marmara, through the Dardanelles into the Aegean Sea, and from there into the Mediterranean. Because if you look at a map, and I've said this many times, you see the Black Sea, and then on the Black Sea you see the Bosphorus, and then from the Bosphorus, like I said, you can go right into the Sea of Marmara, into the Dardanelles, into the Aegean, into the Mediterranean. Russia wants that direct access from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. The problem is Turkey controls the access way from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. The Russians wanted that in the past, and they still want that direct access today. And so this is not just about Syria. This is also about having that access from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. The Russians could have taken it back in the 19th century. The British stopped them, and then the British had to face the Ottoman Empire. And what do we see happening today? We see tension between Turkey and Russia. We see the British, the Germans, the Americans backing Turkey in Syria. Why? To stop the Russians. And we even saw the Israelis going against Syria, going against Russia's ally Syria, toppling Russia's proxy in Syria. And now the Israelis have to face a powerful Turkish powerhouse in the Near East right next door, just as the British later on had to face the Ottoman Empire in World War I. We create monsters only to later have to face those monsters. And Turkey wants to control Syria. Turkey wants to control the Syrian desert. And where did much of the Armenian genocide take place? Have you guys ever looked into this? Where did much of the Armenian genocide occur? It took place in the Syrian desert, and the Turks had death camps. They had a railway system, and they had these train stations, and they converted the train stations into death camps. You can look into this. And they massacred countless Armenians in the Syrian desert. And we're helping these people retake the country where they did much of the Armenian genocide? It's absolutely evil. And so here we are helping this monster. And in the future, the Israelis are going to have to pay the lesson for what they did. It's very sad. It's very sad. I don't take joy in saying these things. But the Israelis are going to have to really face the monster that they helped to create. It's very, very sickening. But anyway, you are seeing the dawn of the rebirth of the Ottoman Empire. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.